Hey guys, it's Bethany Bayless, and I am live in Colorado with Miranda Marquit, the freelancer goddess of all things freelancing. And we're going to talk a little bit what it looks like to be a freelancer. And we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but you were saying, how did you get into that? It wasn't exactly the right way to do it.
That's right. I did it all wrong. I did it all backward. That's the story of my life. I finished my journalism degree and I knew I wanted to work from home. I knew I didn't want a real job. And so I started looking for stuff online. So at the time, my then husband was working on his schooling. So we actually went ahead and took out the student loans, lived on student loans while I got started with the freelancing.
That seems to be very consistent. That's lasted you for a long time.
Yeah, it has. I mean, I started freelancing in 2005. I started writing about money in 2006, and now it's 2019. So, it's in internet years. I'm like ancient.
Well, and I love the idea of freelancing because as we know, as media creators, we love to diversify our income. So not necessarily having income coming from just one stream. And freelancing can be something that people might be considering getting into, whether they have a blog or they have a podcast or something like that. So where would you suggest someone, if they're thinking about getting into freelancing, where do they even start?
It does help a lot to start with your own blog. I mean, when I started, once again, I did it all wrong. When I started, I didn't have a blog. I had been freelancing for 5 years before I even started my own blog. And so, today you really do need to have your own blog. You need to have a place where you can showcase your writing, where people can come and see what you do. But it also helps, I think, to start with your network and, find out what's out there. I mean, one of the great things about FinCon and the FinCon community is that, we're a very helpful community. We are very helpful with the networking, and there's a good chance there's somebody out there who is looking for a writer or knows somebody who's looking for a writer, or there's a freelancer who has more work than they can handle and, can make a referral. So, look at your network, see what's already there, see what you can go with. And then another thing you can do is, there are job boards for freelancers, and you can do that. You can go to the job boards. Media Bistro is one that I like a lot. I do the Pro Blogger job board a lot. And then you can also do, there are a lot of sites that aggregate jobs from a lot of different places. You also have the freelance marketplaces, the freelancer.coms, the guru.coms, the worlds. I am not a huge fan of those. To me, it feels like a race to the bottom because they're trying to continually devalue your work. I and when you start out and go to a job board, you're not going to get paid a ton.
Right. And that leads to one of my other questions of oftentimes when people start out in freelancing or they start out in doing jobs and then they're just beginning, is it ever okay to work for free maybe while you're getting that footing there?
Yeah, so I think you need to be very careful about when you work for free. So I am semi-famous in the community for not ever working for free. I just don't.
Yeah, say no.
Yeah. I mean, there have been a couple times where I've done an occasional guest post or done something like that for somebody I really like. But a lot of the time, it's, I don't work for free. And so I've been kind of lucky in that way. But yeah, occasionally you're probably going to have to write a guest post or probably get out there a little bit and get a chance to do some of that. But the reality is there's lots of paid work out there.
Right.
And you may not start. I mean, when I started hundreds and hundreds of internet years ago, I was writing 300-word keyword articles for $10 a pop. So, back in the day. So it's just kind of, you kind of get there, you kind of build your portfolio, you can build your network. And that's the thing that I love really about going through a network and using a resource like FinCon is that you actually meet people who are looking for writers of higher quality. You meet people who are willing to pay more, who can afford to pay more. And so that's one of the great things about working through a network. All of the work that I do now came from word of mouth, came from networking. And those are the jobs that pay the best.
Yeah.
You know, if you apply for a job on a job board, that's fine. You can do that, and you probably should, and get some portfolio pieces and a little bit of payment going. But you really want to build that network.
Well, and I love that we're talking so much about FinCon because there's so many opportunities for people to do that. And there's so many places that they can go at FinCon, meet with people that they're able to. And you've been at FinCon since the beginning.
Yes.
You were there the very first year. You've seen it grow. You've seen it evolve.
All the FinCons.
You're one of the few and the proud who have been at all of them. And we're almost, we're at 8 years. It's 2019. So it started in 2011. We're coming up on the 8th year.
Yeah.
And what are some of the best advice that you would have for people who might want to start freelancing when going to FinCon? What are some of your best tips for that?
The pro networking pass does cost extra, but for me, I found in the past that it's been worth it.
Yeah.
You sign up for the pro networking, you look to make meetings with people, and then you can go and meet them really quick. And then also be open to opportunities to meet with people outside of like the normal. I mean, a lot of the time I'll have a meeting with somebody, a potential client, like, you know, at like 12:30 or something,
Yeah.
you know, like, oh, well, let's just meet up at like 12:30 and we'll have we'll meet up and have like a quick snack and we'll talk a little bit about what we can do. And, you know, it's really easy, like when you're at FinCon, to get caught up in like running from session to session to session. And there's so much to learn and so many good things that you can learn. But if you have the chance to stop and make a connection, do that. You know, you can always go back and watch the digital session, but you can't always go back and make that new connection.
Right.
And so I find that just being open to that and being open to collaborations with other bloggers and projects and talking to people, I think that helps a lot too.
Well, and I love that because if I think of FinCon, I think about all the connections that I'm making, all the relationships that's going on. And then I think about all the cards that I get, right? Like all the business cards that you're getting from people, I still have stacks of business cards that I haven't been through.
I could paper a wall.
That might be a really great idea of just be like, which one? But what do you think is the best follow-up? Like if you make a relationship, if you make a connection, how do you follow up? Like how do you know that business card, who that belongs to? Do you have any advice for when people, you know, after FinCon? What do you do after that? Because you can make a great relationship and be like, we best friends forever. But then afterwards, if you never talk to them again, then that's a weird friendship.
I was going to say, I go home and I cry and recover. And then,
2 weeks later, then.
That's right.
Or a few months maybe, but.
No, I think if there's something that you've talked about or a person that you've met, like maybe through the pro networking or the freelancers marketplace or just a chance networking connection, and you have their card. You know, a lot of people talk about like jot down a quick note or something to help you remember what you talked about. But if you have made a connection, one of the things I used to do back in the day after the pro networking would be to go back up to my room quietly and jot down a few notes in a notebook about like, okay, this is what we talked about. These, you know, like this person said that they're looking for somebody right now. This person said that they might be looking in a couple months, you know, and then I just send an email and just say, hey, it was really great to talk to you at pro networking. Oh, it was really great to meet you at the freelancers marketplace.
Where you met them.
Yeah, where you met them. Yeah. So it was really great to talk to you there. Hey, I'm just, you know, we talked about, you know, your needs for content. And I was just wondering if you wanted to, like, especially with the pro networking, it's like, hey, you know, we only got to talk for 60 seconds. So
on our speed dating.
Yeah, right. So it's like, so I'd be like, so let's talk a little bit more about your content needs and, you know, talk about maybe what I can help you with.
Yeah.
And just kind of go from there.
Always being willing to ask for it, right?
Yes.
I think that sometimes, me especially, I feel like I get a little weird about asking for money or talking about money, or when this is very normal. Like this is a conversation that you should be having as a freelancer.
Right.
What are some of the ways that you would suggest, you know, being confident about whether you're charging or being paid or those things?
Oh, wow. There is no way.
That's a whole nother Facebook Live.
That's a whole other issue right there.
Yeah.
No, seriously, like, it's hard because you do want to feel like you're getting paid what you're worth, but you also need to look at like what the market is paying.
Right.
So there are a few clients I work with where I'm kind of charging above what is the current market for stuff. You know, and sometimes you just, you know, so it helps to like go around and, you know, maybe ask a little bit, you know, even actually just here at the house, there's another freelancer here, and we were, you know, we've been comparing notes. Well, how much are you getting paid by this client? Well, me too. Make sure we're both getting paid the same amount.
Right.
And, you know, and the first time I talked about it with another freelancer was in Denver, at FinCon in Denver.
Yeah.
And found out this other freelancer was charging like 3 times what I was charging. And I was like, oh boy.
Yeah.
Like,
so is that something that you make your rates, or you negotiate with a specific client?
I negotiate with a specific client.
Okay.
I kind of have a base idea of like, okay, this is in general what I'm going to charge for X.
Yeah.
But mostly I talk to the client, I'm like, okay, what do you need? How often do you need it? What kind of expectations do you have in terms of sourcing? Those things all go into it. And part of it too is, you know, who is the client, right? So an independent blogger, you know, somebody with an independent blog who is looking for help with their content, they can't pay the same thing as like an agency client that maybe I'm working with. And so I understand that. And so I adjust accordingly.
Yeah.
So really, and you won't see a rate sheet for me published anywhere. I don't do that. Because also, it's harder to raise your rates if you have a published rate sheet.
I was going to say, publishing a rate sheet is not necessarily something I would do, because oftentimes it's a case-by-case basis.
Definitely.
Right?
And the other thing too is like when you, as a freelancer, when you start hearing yes, 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 yes to your rate, and when you start filling up with work and you start feeling overwhelmed with work, that is a clue that it's time to raise your rates. And so if you don't have a published rate card, then the next person that calls you, the next person that asks you, ask for $50 or $100 more than you asked for the last client. And if they say yes, that's great. And now you can maybe wrap up your last project with a couple of lower paying clients and move on and drop them from the rotation. And so for me, moving up the kind of rate ladder has been like more of a cycle.
Right.
You know, like saying, okay, I have this many clients, this much, and, you know, I'll charge this much. And when I get to the point where I raise my rates for the next client, and then I can cycle down. And so you just kind of, it's like climbing a ladder. Well, and it's like the CD ladder, you guys.
Exactly. I remember those. But it's one of those things where like, better to have fewer clients paying more money than more clients paying less money, and not being afraid of if they say no.
Exactly.
Right.
And, and that's kind of where I got. I mean, a few years ago, I got to the point where I just like complete meltdown.
Yeah.
Like complete meltdown. I mean, I was like, there was a time when I was writing like 10 articles a day, and like I was like burning out, and then just one day I just like didn't get out of bed. I laid there all day. And then like for 2 days after that, I didn't do any work. And I was just like, there has to be a different way. There has to be another way for me to do this. And that's when I started kind of raising my rates a little bit and saying, and that's where I'm at now, is where I'm to the point now where I'm just like, you know, a lot of people, it's really popular in our community to have like income goals. And I'm actually to the point where I'm like, no, I have my lifestyle goals, and I have, you know, and like right now my goal is, it's like a lot of days I'm still like maybe writing 3 articles. Yeah. And my goal is like, well, you know, I make enough per article that I could scale that back to like 1 a day. Yeah. So, you know, I'm kind of working. We always find that you always have to be looking for that balance, because that is the hardest thing about being a freelancer, is finding that.
I imagine.
That balance, because on the one hand, you are always, you know, you always need to make sure you have the next gig, and you always have to make sure you have the next work, but you can't take on so much that you just like burn out.
Yeah, because it's also one of those things that like you can only give so much of yourself.
Yes.
Right? So if you have fewer things, you're able to give more of yourself and put it in direct buckets, as opposed to just scattering your, you know, like just trying to spray and pour everything that you can. So Right,
yeah. And I found too, you know, I mean, as I started as I was able to climb the rate ladder and charge more and write less, then you have more time for things like your hobbies or your children.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah. Well,
it's nice to be able to spend time with your children.
You know, one day I will. But that leads to another point. What are some of your favorite ways to organize your time? Because I know everyone does it differently. Everyone has a system that works for them, and finding that system of how they're able to just crank it out the best way. What are some of your favorite tools to organize yourself, and how do you keep that straight?
Tools.
Also, a tool could be like a pen and paper, like that. I have my notebooks, like I have my calendars, you know.
So I have made what is essentially an Excel spreadsheet, but like hard copy.
Okay.
So I have this. It's this board I have at home. It's like an old shelf, like from one of those press board, like bookshelf things. I flipped it over to like the cheap wood side and like got a Sharpie, and I've like divided it up into like cells. And then I have like thin strips of sticky paper, you know, like the little bookmarker sticky note things. So basically it's like this Excel spreadsheet that I can like manipulate in the real world and move things. So I've got like, you know, I've got like the article title, the client, the source that I'm using, special notes, and the rate they're paying. And then I have another little thing for like another thing off to the side that like keeps track of like special invoicing things that I need to take care of. And I do. So I just at the beginning of the week, I just lay it all like, it's more of a rolling 10-day kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I just kind of lay it all out with the sticky notes and just stick it all in. And
I really want to see a picture of this. Like, I want you to send me a picture of this, and I'll put it in the comments or something, because I love just how people are able to do it. And it doesn't have to necessarily be like super high tech, or, you know, it's whatever works for you, and just finding out how to organize your time. Because I feel like that's half the battle, right?
And when I get one done, I take it off and then I go put it in, and I do keep an Excel spreadsheet like on the computer, like that helps me keep track of like, you know, who I've invoiced this month, how much when they've paid. I also use paper and pen to do that.
It's beautiful.
And, you know, but I do. I like have a thing where I'm like, well, here's the date I invoice them, and then I put in when they pay. So I can keep track of that. So that's nice. And then I started accepting Venmo for my payments.
Really?
Yes, which is great. I have a few big clients where they do direct deposit, which is really nice. Because if you are a freelancer, you know the pain of PayPal fees. And that's the thing, right? Venmo is owned by PayPal, but Venmo fees are like, it's like 50 cents to like transfer it to your bank account. So I've actually started accepting Venmo payments. And actually, Steve Stewart is the one that inspired me to do that, because he does.
That's incredible. I haven't heard that before.
And so I when my invoice goes out, my invoice has a little thing that they can pay me by PayPal if they must. Then, you know, or I have my address, because I still have, believe it or not, clients that send me paper checks. And then I have my Venmo address, and people can just Venmo me the money.
Well, I love that. Well, I'll Venmo you for this later, and just
I did bring you chicken wings.
You totally brought me chicken wings. I do have to Venmo you later. True story. Definitely a thing. But thank you so much for talking to me about this. I feel like there's so many questions that, you know, other people might have. Is there a way that they can reach out to you, or where they can find you online and all of your wisdom?
Well, so I'm on the Twitter.
The Twitter is beautiful.
I'm on the Twitter. But no, like at @Marquit. You have to use the @Marquit. So because back in the day, before I was like, you know, because I remember I was an early adopter of the Twitter. But like, I was like, I gotta remain semi-anonymous on these sites. So I was like, Marquit, right? Because there's so many Marquits around. But I didn't do my full name. So, okay, everybody, this is a lesson to you. Get your full name on all the platforms. If you go to @Miranda Marquit, there's some dude named Jacob or something that's squatting on it and hasn't posted in years.
Is he doing that on purpose, do you think?
I have no idea. But it's Marquit, you guys.
I love that. Like, I'm trying to own all of Bethany Bayless. Like, Bethany Bayless on Instagram, Twitter, all those things.
And it's especially important for a freelancer, because your name is your brand. And so you've got to be out there and you've got to be consistent on your social media. And so that's what's sad, right? Because like my Pinterest, my Instagram, and my Twitter are all like M. Marquit.
Well, at least you're consistent. So
then you can find me other places. And then, and then I'm always happy, you can always direct message me through those platforms. But,
awesome.
I'm always happy to ignore your email at mirandamarquit@gmail.com.
Amazing. Well, I'll shoot you an email later too.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I try to answer emails when I try really hard.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you so much. And
thank you so much.
We'll see everybody else on another Facebook Live in the future.